Grandpa pays the price. All hands in the kitchen. If you want any supper, Grandma called, trying to make her voice sound gay. The children were glad to have something to do so that they wouldn't have to think so much about what had happened, the open gate and everything. It was nearly time for Grandpa to come in with a bucket of fresh milk. At least Raggle-Taggle was saying so in a loud voice. He wanted his saucer of milk right now. The children were not so eager for Grandpa to come in. They dreaded what he might say about the open gate, and when he came in, they kept busy finding things to do in the kitchen. They even wished they didn't have to eat supper at the same table. Ooh, they're afraid of Grandpa? At first, they looked down at their plates and didn't say anything. But Grandpa didn't scold. In fact, he didn't talk about the gate at all. So after a while, their hearts began to feel a little better, and supper began to taste better too. Little by little, they could look up from their plates and face Grandpa again. After supper, we'll fix up my share of the job sheets and decide on their rules, Grandpa said, smiling. What do you say to that? That would have been a lot of fun to think about, except when Grandpa mentioned rules, it reminded them once more about the open gate. Then they felt kind of sick inside again. After supper, they got their job sheets and were having a time deciding on rules for their farm cooperative. Then there was a knock at the back door. Grandma went to the door. Mr. Brown is here to see you, she said. Grandpa got up and went to the next room to talk to Mr. Brown. The children saw Grandma's face look worried again, as it had when Grandpa asked her to phone Mr. Brown that afternoon. They could hear the men talking in low tones. They listened. Grandpa was telling Mr. Brown what happened to the calf. Then they talked about the price of calves. Next, they saw Grandpa go to another room. When he came back, he had some money in his hand. He gave the money to Mr. Brown. After Mr. Brown had gone, Grandpa and Grandma looked at each other and tried to smile a little, but it wasn't a very cheerful smile. Margie knew that they did not have much money, and she wondered why Grandpa gave money to Mr. Brown. Also, she wondered what Mr. Brown had to do with the calf. She wondered so hard that she just had to ask Grandpa, why did Mr. Brown come in to see about the calf? Because the calves belonged to him, Margie. And to be honest, I had to tell him the truth about what happened. You see, I take care of the calves for Mr. Brown. But if the calf belonged to Mr. Brown, why did you have to give him money for it? Well, dear, when people trust you with something, you are supposed to take good care of it. If something happens that is your fault, then it's only fair that you pay the price. But Grandpa, it wasn't your fault, Margie wailed, and it wasn't fair to make you pay the price. The children were all listening with eyes and ears wide open. Grandpa looked at them very soberly. I know, it was your fault, but could you have paid the price? They shook their heads slowly and looked down at the floor. Poor Grandpa. They had caused him so much trouble, and then he had to pay the price for them too. Oh, they were so ashamed. Grandpa went on in a kind voice. You see, I knew you could not pay the price, but I love you children so much that I was willing to pay it for you, even though it's hard for me to do, because I'm an old man and cannot work hard anymore. I do not have much money, but I won't mind paying the price if it will help you children to remember to obey the rules. Oh, Grandpa, we are so sorry, and we will always remember about the rules. Just then they heard the big clock striking. It was time for evening prayers. Margie, would you like to bring me my Bible? Grandpa turned the leaves a few moments until he found a certain verse. Then he read it slowly. It said something about how children should obey. In their prayers, they told God that they were sorry too, and they prayed that He would help them to keep the rules. Then they went to bed feeling much better in their hearts.